Justice League member, community activist, and advocate for the victim. Tamika.
Good morning, and thank you all so much for coming, and particularly to those who are standing with us today. We appreciate all of you for being here. The officers who have come forward, particularly to stand with Justice League in this moment, is really an incredible opportunity for us to look at what we have been dealing with as community activists and what officers who may not be as brave as these gentlemen to come forward have been dealing with as well. It is an opportunity for us to have a new moment and a refreshing moment in this city. What is unfortunate is that as of late, we've heard from our commissioner that the officers who also work for him and their claims are being called bullshit. That in itself is more of what we know creates an environment where racist policies can be in effect in communities of color. Because the commissioner has decided that these officers who work with him are not a part of the people who he intends to protect and defend. That to us is unacceptable. Not only should there be accountability for the officers, but there must be accountability for the commissioner of the NYPD, Commissioner Bratton. And we hope that he will understand that even if one officer says that there are discriminatory practices taking place within the department, that one officer should be listened to and his claims should be investigated in the appropriate manner to ensure that those people who are supposed to be protected and served are being just that. That is not what we have seen happening in communities of color across this city. We know that we are not crazy. The activists, the advocates, the families, the victims, those who we have worked with and supported for years are not crazy. And so the officers who have come forward are pretty much providing us with the information that we need as to why there is over-policing and discriminatory practices taking place in our communities. And if the commissioner wants to heal community police relations, it will not come from training people with the same training that has gotten us in the position that we're in. It will come from us taking an honest look at what is happening in the department, listening to the few good apples, as my brother Angelo has stated, and coming together to say there is a problem, and until we call it what it is, which is that our communities are being discriminated against. Until we say that, state that, and be real about it, we will never have positive community police relations. I want to bring forward two other officers that we have heard from in the past. When looking at the stop and frisk case, which many of us have been very involved in, and we're happy with the results that because of the judge's work in that case and her ruling, it was found to be an unconstitutional policing practice and therefore has quote unquote been ended, but we know that broken windows is an extension of stop and frisk, so there's work to be done there. But we've heard from these officers in that case, and I think it's important for the media that is here today to understand that this is not an easy thing for these officers to step forward. And so when you're writing your stories and you write them in ways that criminalizes the police officers who are speaking on behalf of the community, you really don't do justice to them and you put their lives in danger. So we hope that you will be careful in what it is that you write and say about them after this press conference today. But let me bring two of the officers forward to
experience. If you don't see the Gilchrist experience up there, we're having problems with our titles today. Welcome to the show, co-host Graham Weatherspoon. Tamika is stuck on the highway. She should be here in a minute. Now, this press conference was put together by Tamika and Justice League.
Justice League, N.Y.C.
New York's N.Y.C. Mm-hmm. Tell us about this conference there and our buddy
Edwin Raymond.
Edwin Raymond, right? The officer involved. One of the officers involved.
One of 11 officers who have filed suit against the New York City Police Department. Mm-hmm. Tamika, you know, she was with Nan for a long period of time, working with Reverend Sharpton and doing a lot of executive work with Nan, and she's now with the with Justice League N.Y.C. And ironically enough, they're not just local, they're doing national things. You know,
Yeah.
she's going to be telling us about what's going on in Flint, Michigan, because they've been out
Right.
there for some time. But she organized this press conference. It was held at Bethany Baptist Church, historic church in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Going back to the days of Milton Galamison, Reverend Sandy Ray, and others during the Civil Rights
And that's
era.
Reverend Sharpton's home church.
His home church, right. Reverend Jones was
Yeah.
the pastor there for many years.
That voice.
That voice,
Oh,
La
yeah.
City. You know, but Bill Jones, a
Bill
dynamic pastor and civil rights leader he was one of Martin Luther King's lieutenants.
That's right.
So to hold that press conference at that location with the present pastor, it said a lot. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the current pastor's name, but Tamika put this press conference together following the article which came out in the New York Times and the Sunday Times. It came out twice. It came out on a Tuesday, and then it was the lead story on the Sunday magazine of the New York Times 3 weeks ago. And it was the longest article in the history of the New York Times. And it was about
Officer Raymond.
Officer Raymond.
Yeah, I read that whole
Right,
thing.
and the work that he's done prior to being a police officer and as a police officer, and the organization that he founded, Plot, preparing leaders of tomorrow, taking young boys off the street, getting them out of that street mentality of hustling and getting them into school, back into school, and jump-starting their lives and getting college education. So
And he joined the force at 22,
he joined
right?
the force at 22.
And he's
Or
30 now.
22 at 23, yeah, he's
Yeah.
30 now. Scored number 8 on the sergeant's exam. Out of over 2,000 people that passed the exam, and out
It
of
was
5,000
6,000.
people that took it.
I thought
You know,
it was 6,000.
5 or 6,000 took it,
6,000.
but only about 2,500 or 2,800 passed the exam. So he scored number 8, and because he is not willing to bring in the numbers that they want, he chose to expose this along with others. And he's not the first officer to talk about this. And if our listeners would go back and check online, NYPD quotas, you will find that police officers in Staten Island last year talked about it. They had the whiteboard and things that were written by the commanding officer and the threats if they didn't bring in the activity. There were officers in Queens. The PBA has talked about this as well because it was bad for the morale. Ironically enough, they took a survey this past week and they said that the biggest problem with NYPD now is their morale and their sense of safety, their lack of safety. So this is something that's been ongoing. But here, finally, we have Edwin Raymond, Polanco, and others who have stepped forward and filed a lawsuit in court.
12 of them, right?
I think it's 11 or 12.
Okay.
But they have decided to come forward and take that bold stand over and against the department for the way in which it's being run as it applies to people of color in New York City. And Officer Raymond broke it down for us last week. He said, you know, if you get a summons in the street
Right.
and you fail to pay it and you get stopped again, it comes up as a warrant
Right.
and you get arrested. Now, ironically, this past week, the commissioner said they're not going to arrest people for trivial things. Well, there's nothing magnanimous about that statement because you should not have been arresting people for trivial things. They should have been given a summons, allowed to pay the summons and go on with their life, not being arrested or even being summoned. And the fact that people are summoned in one part of Brooklyn and not summoned in another part of Brooklyn is a fact. So that is called selective enforcement.
They're calling this broken windows?
Well, that was the application that Commissioner Bratton brought to New York. Broken windows is a sociologic theory. It has nothing to do with policing. He has applied it to policing. Even when Mayor Giuliani was mayor, going back, because Bratton was here with the transit police and then he became commissioner, he and Giuliani.
Explain broken windows.
Broken windows is that you have to step on the minor things that are going on to prevent bigger things from happening. In
I
other
see.
words, if your 3-year-old child is acting out, smack him upside the head, you know, and he will not act out. Well, that doesn't work. You see, because in policing, it doesn't work with the child, it doesn't work in policing.
How does it apply to kids sneaking on the subway?
Well, this was the thing. The notion was that the people that are not paying the fare are the people that are committing all the crimes.
Oh, really?
Okay.
But if
So-
you're a student, you're late for school, you sneak on the subway, you
sneak on
forgot
the
your
subway.
pass.
And that's a given. Most kids, you know, it's just the idea of sneaking on the subway.
Yeah.
I got, you know, yeah, and we're going to Coney Island or wherever we're going. They're not going to commit a crime. They're kids. So years ago, even when I was a cop, I wasn't writing a kid up. We called it a YD, a youth referral card. Now, I worked plain clothes. I wasn't doing youth referrals on kids. My job was to catch criminals. So if I had a kid that was acting out, I would tell them, these are the options. I want your phone number, and I want to speak to your mother or somebody.
Yeah.
And I would call the parent and tell them, I have your son here. Talk to your mother to verify that it is the parent. Okay, now, your son is doing X, Y, and Z, and he's at this location. All right, do you know well, what's he doing there? Well, that's why I'm calling you. Obviously, he's where he shouldn't be, and he's hanging out with people he shouldn't be hanging out with. I'm putting him on a train, I'm sending him back home, so meet him at the subway, as opposed to writing him up and having his name in the computer files. Because once your name gets in a police file, it doesn't get out without an order from a judge. Right, so.
We're going to take, I want you to roll in the first roll in, and we'll be right back at you while Tamika comes on the set. All right?
Yay,
Come on, Tommy.
Hey. Oh my God. All of you for being out here. Hello, Mr. Montgomery. How you doing? I want to thank everyone who came out tonight, all of you who have heard the call, and those people who have already been out here for welcoming us into your space. Because people like Aisha Sekou and others have been out here doing this work for a long time. That's right. And we appreciate you for partnering with us, Aisha, and the Reverend Vernon Williams and the Erica Fords and the A.T. Mitchells and all the people who are on the ground day to day that are really the only thing between the trigger and the finger. They really are that. That's how serious it is.
We have not done an inventory and a self-analysis and therefore dealt with the purpose in our community. What are our institutions for if we can't address the
I sat in the funeral home and helped to plan the funeral of a 4-year-old baby, a baby, Cheyenne Norman's baby, Chris Morgan Jr. Hurt me to my heart to help pick out the casket for this baby, and they couldn't find the right size because he was so small. I sat there with Dominique Sharpton and others and watched this mother keep getting up to go outside because they were asking her business questions about burying her baby. And I realized at that moment that who am I to be so selfish not to lend myself every minute of the day to save another life. And so I'm standing out here. This is not a joke. It's not about the cameras. It's not about us just having a reason to come out and show that I'm here tonight. Tomorrow night we need to be back. And the next night. And in 4 weeks, what else are we going to do? When this is over, that's what we need to be asking ourselves. How are we going to ensure that the people that are on the street every night get the money they need to take care of their business and save lives on the street? I'm very serious that we need to expose any and everybody who is not working every day on saving our children's lives. Because if children were dying on the Upper East Side, the city would be shut down. The kids look like us, and that's why it's acceptable. But it shouldn't be acceptable for us. And so that's what being on these corners is about. Reverend Sharpton said, if we can't get the picture, that we gotta get up off our behinds and stop sitting in our homes, let's go out to the corners and pull our people out. And that's why we're out here tonight. So I'm glad to see all of you out here on the night that people found out Reverend Sharpton was gonna be here on this corner tonight. But tomorrow night, where are we gonna be?
The sidebar was fantastic. Welcome to the show, Tamika Mallory. That, of course, was 2012, but her campaign, which we were listening to while this was running, is Flint, Michigan, which is up to date. And tell us about the hearings yesterday.
Wow. So, yeah, yesterday we were really happy to see that there is some accountability process taking place.
Okay.
There was a congressional oversight hearing that Congressman Cummings, who we, of course, trust, was a part of. And there were many others. I mean, Carolyn Maloney, the New York Congresswoman, she spoke very, very well. They asked a lot of very, very hard and tough questions. They were
Republicans?
Actually, Republicans and Democrats alike. They were very, very serious. No one was trying to cover it up.
Okay.
Everyone was very serious. And so the former emergency manager who was in charge during the time when all of this this disaster took place, Ely is his name, an African-American man. He was before the congressional committee. Also the head of the EPA, who has now since resigned, she was there. And there were other...
That was for the state?
Yeah, she was for Region 5.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly what Region 5 covers, but it's more than, I believe.
No, that's more than the state.
Yeah, it's more than the
federal.
State. Yeah, it's she's a part of the federal folks that are supposed to be supposed to have some oversight on what's happening, and you could tell that she really just kind of either didn't know or just didn't care based upon the questioning, the line of questioning, and her answers. It was very nonchalant, and I think what was most disheartening for me, was when they asked her whether she feels that anyone in her office did anything wrong, and her response was no. She felt they could have done more, but they didn't do anything wrong. And so,
why would all this evidence she deny something like that?
I mean, because I don't know, the arrogance, the privilege is very apparent, and it's really unfortunate because I think that all of us have a human sense, right?
Yeah,
so if you say you're sorry, at least that makes people feel like you have somehow reconciled with what has happened. But to say that no one did anything wrong, it furthers our call for all of them to be arrested, because really that's what this is about. This is not just a mistake. This is criminal negligence, and people need to be prosecuted. And I believe that there are more than one person who we believe will go to jail, but Governor Snyder need not be let off the hook. And that's where our focus is from Justice League's perspective, and so are the local residents in Flint, that we cannot have scapegoats, other people who are, indicted, if you will, and not have the governor who everyone was reporting to. And he was the person who decided to cut budgets in all of these different municipalities and put the emergency managers in place, which is the most democratic process that I've ever seen, that you have an emergency manager put in place who does not have to answer to the people.
Tell us the job of an emergency manager. What's his job? What does he get to do?
Well, what I found
appointed by the governor.
Appointed by the governor. And what I found out yesterday is that there can be all different types of reasons. So an emergency manager can be brought in to deal with different things. This particular situation, he was being brought in to deal with cutting the budget. That he was brought, exactly, period. He was brought
save
in
money.
to save money
Okay.
and to cut the budget. So therefore, there was no human intent involved in what they were doing. It was really just about how do we save money?
Yeah.
We're going to switch to the Flint River, which everyone knew was a bad idea. The water was no good. And again, what's most disheartening in that situation is that when the citizens began to cry out that their water smelled funny, that it didn't taste the same, that it looked funny, and that people were becoming ill, there was no response. You know, his response is, well, we did hear it, and we did this, and we did that, and we did exactly what this one and that one and the third said do. But he did not at any point exert any energy to say, you know, I've got to figure out exactly what's going on, and I'm not going to bed until I know. Then they asked him yesterday, and I forget, it was one of the Democratic congressional members asked him, did he ever hold any hearings with the community?
Right.
Never. Nothing.
I understand. Steve Harvey did a show on this yesterday or Monday. And I was watching this show, and I had tears in my eyes. My mother-in-law was crying. I can't fathom this. I just can't fathom how people can be doing this. These people know better than ISIS, ISIL, or any other wacko group. But he had the mayor, the current mayor of Flint, Michigan, on, a black woman, and she's newly elected, and this bomb was dropped in her lap. So she's not really accountable. This is just blown up in her face. The former mayor, was Bing the former mayor of Flint?
No, there was, I forget the man's name. It was a Caucasian male. I don't know if it was Daly. I can't remember his name, but he also was before the committee yesterday. And it's becoming very clear that he really wasn't given any jurisdiction or any rights over this situation either. As a matter of fact, what it appears, based upon Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton's questioning, that he and the other city council members were presented with a different scenario than what was actually done. So they never even really had an opportunity to vote on the specifics of what took place that created this disaster.
So this was a conspiracy.
Well, so that's what we're saying. And see, what I want to eventually get to the bottom of, and many of the congressional members yesterday began to touch on it, but they didn't get too deep into it. However, many people walked away saying, there's a rat here, we smell it, we know it's here. Somewhere along the line, there's some privatization that has taken place, right? So there's somewhere
they're charging
that
for the water.
corporations. So that's the other crime. The other crime.
They're paying for dirty water.
They have the highest rates anyway, water rates. For bills that people are receiving. And for the last 2.5 years that the water has been contaminated, people have still been charged for the water, and liens have been placed on the homes of those people who have not been able to pay for the
there's
water.
A scam
and
in
there
here
is
somewhere.
a number of around 17,000 foreclosures that have happened as a result of people not paying their water bill. And then the worst crime of it all is that when you get a lien on your home, Child Protective Services can come in and take your children. So there are people who are dealing with Child Protective Services as a result of them not paying the water bill.
You see,
And I understand that they could.
Is that a crime?
They could have solved this whole thing with $100 a day to purify the water.
To purify the water.
$100 a day.
Now, but let me just tell you this.
Go ahead,
though.
go ahead.
Because this is just, it's an American scandal, and that is what Congresswoman Maloney called it. She said it's an American scandal, and people here must be held accountable. It's just so many different elements and layers to this thing. But when you talk about the filters and the amount of money that it would have cost in order to filter the water, instead of them doing that, they actually worked with General Motors, who was complaining about the water corroding their car products, to change their water supply back to the clean water. So General Motors called the governor and said, our water, the water is not good for our car parts, and we need to figure it out. And they worked with them to fix their water system and left human beings drinking
Oh,
the
that's
bad
criminal.
water.
That's criminal.
We're listening.
No,
We're
I mean,
listening.
really,
No,
this
go ahead.
is serious. And yesterday, when Ely, the former emergency manager, was asked about it, his response was that the chemicals that they were using to treat the water were actually having a bad interaction with the metal and this, whatever that's the cars are made from, but that it wasn't, that they weren't, he was never told it was the actual water. So so someone asked him, so there's no
say that
common
again.
sense.
So if the chemicals in the water are bad for the metal in the car, how can they be good for the human beings drinking the water?
He said that they were never told by whomever is responsible for checking the water. They were
about
never
A-
told that that was an issue. And they asked him, what about your common sense?
They said
What
the
about
water.
EPA and all this?
EPA was silent for a very long time, and they
How is
knew.
that?
So the best part about this all technology, which, you know, it can work against you or for you, in this particular situation, it works on the behalf of the residents of Flint, because there are emails that were just flying around that people were just either ignoring or responding back to in an unprofessional way, and it's just a lot of criminal activity that's taking place. But the sad part is that there are children. There are children who we could sit up here on talk shows and Steve Harvey and this one and that one, and we cry and whatever. But in 10 years,
Gotta see
many
it.
of our children are going to be going into the jail.
The effects.
They're going to be arrested for all types of things. They won't be able to listen and learn in school properly because of this, the negligence of these people. And for that, if for nothing else, somebody needs to go to
So
jail.
what sort of harm has all this done?
So first of all, I may have
mean,
said
you've seen
to
it
you
up
all,
close, right?
I've been there for the 5 weekends. I went back and forth to Flint. And, you know, we met a little girl who was 4 years old at a church. And I got to spend a lot of time with her because she's like hanging around the church every time we came, and she
Yeah.
got to know us.
Yeah.
So when we had our town hall meeting, she was sitting down with Justice League members, left her parents, she's hanging out with us. And she's listening to what they're saying. And so she says to us, listen, she actually told Carmen Perez, my partner, you know, my private parts burned from the water. You know, 4 years old, a little baby. This is what she's saying. You know, there's all types of issues. Legionnaires' disease is
Yes,
a
I
problem.
heard about that.
87
Yeah.
people have been diagnosed with Legionnaires in Flint.
And that becomes
never
airborne,
had it.
too.
And exactly. And they never had a Legionnaires problem until this. There are people losing their hair. There are people who have begun to build, you know, to develop lesions on their skin.
Have you seen all this?
I've seen it all. I've seen there was a little baby that the sister, the 8-month-old sister of the little girl, the 4-year-old, her sister has just rashes and bruises and everything all over her body, scratching herself. It is unrealistic.
There was a doctor on Steve Harvey's show. A lady was saying her children were tested. There were no evident side effects. He said there are side effects.
Yeah.
They're just not manifesting themselves yet.
Right.
He said, but they're coming. And she said they were just washing their face and brushing their teeth. He said they should have no contact. Your skin is the largest organ in your body.
Exactly.
Right.
And people have problems. People that like taking hot baths should not because of the chlorine in the water. A friend of mine, his wife came up with chlorine in her blood because she likes taking hot baths. That's not good for you in New York or any place where the water is chlorinated and or fluoridated. These are carcinogens. They give you cancer.
Exactly.
Which is why I stopped drinking the city water, I don't know how long ago. So he said, your child should not be brushing his or her teeth with this water, let alone washing their face, because the chemicals go right into your pores. So the question is, and where do people go? You know, when the city went insolvent in 1975, the city was taken over in the same way by emergency management who oversaw the financial running and operations of the city. What they're going to do, let's look long term. Flint is almost a ghost town. A lot of abandoned homes. And the same thing that happens in Flint happens here. If you fail to pay your water bill, if you fail to pay your sewer bill, the city will put a lien on your house and take your house after a specific number of years. I can't remember whether it's 3 or 4. But the tax liens, you can get away not paying real estate tax. But if you don't pay the water and sewer tax, they'll take your house quicker,
Wow.
even in New York.
Wow.
And the posting of those liens comes up in either March or May, and it's published in the newspaper. So just as they do it in Flint, they do it here. So what's going to happen with Flint? And let's look at New Orleans. Let's look at New Orleans, look at Flint. They moved a whole bunch of people out of the 9th Ward and out of New Orleans,
Right.
shot them all around the country. And they're going to redevelop that area. They've filled in around Lake Pontchartrain. They're going to put nice homes and everything there. And it's going to change the landscape.
Of course.
They had an issue with the voting and realigning the districts, where black people were outnumbered in every district. So they didn't have a district where the people in central New Orleans were in control of themselves. They had all of they chopped the city up like a pie and then annexed each section to a white community outside of New Orleans. So the white people outside of New Orleans had control of New Orleans. Now, Flint, Michigan. All these poor people are going to have to get out of Flint.
Right.
They're going to have to get out. And then, out of the goodness of the American government, they're going to bulldoze all that. They're going to redo the infrastructure. All the abandoned homes are going to be redeveloped because the developers are going to come in. And there's going to be a new Flint, Michigan.
All right,
But the poor people that live there, just like in Harlem, they're not going to be there. That'll be the backside.
I've got a different scenario on this one. I see Hillary and Bernie running as president and vice president, sweeping the Congress, taking over the House, and taking over the Senate, and we have a new day coming.
Well, those people have
Let me
to be
finish my
elected. They got to be elected first.
I see Hillary as the president, period. Hillary, Bernie will be vice president. We'll have the Democratic Senate and the Democratic House. Then what happens to Flint? With Hillary
It's so
coming
funny you
in,
say that. But my mom has said the same thing. They should just get it over
Good.
with. President, vice president, let's
Right,
just vote
exactly.
and go home. But you know, I don't know about that scenario. But what I will say is, in terms of the Democratic president we have today, which is President Barack Obama, I am extremely disappointed in the way the president has handled the Flint, Michigan situation. One, he hasn't been there, and you know, it's not just black folks in Flint. There's a Latino community, there's an undocumented community, which we'll talk about that a little bit later because they're the most disenfranchised in the entire area. And then there is
Middle Eastern, I saw.
Yes, and then there are poor white folks there. He hasn't been there, and I can't imagine what would happen if this had been like Bloomfield Hills or some other more affluent area in Michigan or anywhere else in the world, how the president would go into the state and not go to the place where people, American citizens, have been poisoned on American soil. And not just a few people, but thousands and thousands and children, for him not to be there. And then moreover, this kind of...
why do you think he's not there?
I'm not sure. I mean, I have a theory. My theory is that there's probably so much lead poisoning and everything else happening all over the country that people are probably advising him that if you touch this, then you got to deal with all these other places. Look at Newark now, you know, where we're hearing they have higher lead than even in Flint.
The schools. So if it's in the, you know, I'm sorry, they say the water in the schools. It's not the water in the schools. That's the same water the people are drinking in their homes.
Exactly.
It's the same
It's
water.
the same water.
So the people should be testing the water, and people around the country are going to wake up to find out. You know, the city of New York issues every, I think, 3 months, the test of the water, and you can see it online. But it might do us well to do our own testing.
You know, President Obama put in an infrastructure bill, I don't know how many years ago, which was held up by the Congress. Now, all this had to deal with the infrastructure and keeping the water clean.
And all of that's good. I think, you know, I love the president. I think that he walks into most situations with the best intentions, if not all situations.
Right.
But the human contact in this situation, to me, is not there. What we've found when we've been in Flint is that you could bring hundreds and thousands of bottles of water in, and there's no proper distribution system. The reason why is because FEMA is not on the ground in a substantial way, since it is not a natural disaster.
FEMA's a joke.
Right? So if FEMA has been deployed as under the category of natural disaster into Flint, there would be an actual distribution model that people could rely on. They
Isn't
know
that the governor
where
has
to go.
ask for
The
this?
governor
He
is
does.
supposed to ask, and I
Okay.
understand that the president, it is illegal for him to step across
Ah,
the
there
process
you go.
and all
All
these
right.
different things.
All right.
However,
That's fine.
here's my point.
Okay.
When the president, which I agree 100% with, started the Blackmail Initiative, he decided to reach out to the private sector to raise funds and to get people involved in the Blackmail Initiative because he understood that he wouldn't be able to get anything done going through the House and
Right.
any of those in the federal government. It's not going to happen. The same rules apply when people have been poisoned. Where are the Magic Johnsons? Where are all these people? And where's the coordination, the call from Mrs. Obama saying, Jill, Biden, we're going to go together to Flint and get on the ground and make sure that these children know that the president and first lady of this country actually care that you've been poisoned by our government.
right.
You know, not by Susie May at the schoolhouse.
Not by ISIS.
Not by ISIS.
The people you
The
elected
people you elected.
and appointed.
It's unreal. So I'm
Well,
disappointed.
they watched the show, so we'll get
And
the word.
we're releasing a letter to him tomorrow, a public letter,
Okay.
giving him some understanding of what's going on and telling him not to rely on what he's hearing from the government. Because the government has already let down the people. Go to Flint and talk to the organizers who are on the ground, who, by the way, are very sick themselves. You know, so it's a real crisis. And every American should be concerned about this. Even if you don't care about poor people, you don't care about black people, you don't care about undocumented people, you should care about when you turn the faucet on. Someone has control over what's coming through
That's right.
and what's going into your body.
You mentioned privatization. Hit on that. point.
So what we know is that, and I'm still doing some research on this, but what we know is that the company who was bought in to handle the switches and the people who are now responsible for the water lines and all of that are private companies. And what we're trying to dig into and get down to is when did they come into play? Have they always been, not always, but have they been there for before this happened and they became a part of the conversation with the governor and other people that, hey, we've got a thing you could do. Oh, and they're from, oh, they just told me yesterday, excuse me if I'm wrong, they're definitely an international company. They're not American.
Oh, wow.
So
So
see,
you think
all
this is
these
planned
things,
genocide?
I don't know what it is, but a genocide is definitely a word that I
Okay.
want to use, that we have been using.
Okay.
And, you know, I don't know exactly, I don't know everything, but I'm with the congressional members who said yesterday there's a rat somewhere.
What do you think's going to happen to the governor when he shows up, tomorrow?
I believe and I hope, because yesterday what I watched happen, as I mentioned in the hearing with the other people, other parties involved, was that both sides, Republican and Democrat, were very hard. They asked real serious
That's
questions.
good to hear.
And I'm hoping that they will go there and do the same tomorrow with the governor. We will be there, certainly.
What do you think should happen to the governor?
I think the governor should be indicted. I think he should be indicted. And I don't believe in the death penalty, right? So I'm totally against it.
I go with the torture.
But you know, I'm real close on this one because this is very, very serious. This is not, you know, we passed a law that allows a young man to be shot and killed, and we need to go out there and protest and all of that and do those things, which we know that we stand 100% against. This is a group of people just being swept up into death.
Because of the economic situation.
There is no economic situation. See, this is the problem is that the state has a surplus of money.
No, I don't
That's
mean the
what I heard.
economic situation of the state.
Oh,
I'm
of
talking
the
about the people
individuals.
living in that
Absolutely.
community.
Poor people.
There was a lady on.
There
She
aren't
had
there
a
rich people
bill.
involved with this too?
Sort of, kind of. Flint has some issues. I mean,
Yeah.
they've always had very, very poor pockets. So right outside, around it, there are very affluent neighborhoods that have clearly not been affected by this water
Not a
crisis.
okay.
Because you can shut down the feeds.
Absolutely.
Going into the areas, you can shut it down. The government, in the event of a martial law or some urban, let's say urban crisis, they can shut the grids down to specific areas of the city so there's no electricity. They can shut the gas off. They can shut the water off. And it doesn't affect the surrounding areas. So they can do that knowingly and intentionally. And they can divert and redivert the water any way they want to do it. And that's one of the things they have to look at is the layout of the piping in the city and where the controls are. There was a woman who was on, she said she was paying $150 a month water bill.
Right.
You don't pay that in 3 months in New York. And she lives alone.
There's a lady right now who has an $18,000 debt to the water company. And they're working on, so they are passing laws here and there, and there is something now that the governor has put in place where you no longer have to pay the water bill until this situation is straight. However,
but you still got to pay it.
No, it's going to be excused.
Oh.
However, you have to be up to date in order to get into that program.
So you can't get in
So
there.
either way, you still are screwed. I mean, there should be no one billing anybody for anything. And so these are other little crises. This is what I mean about this FEMA situation and the president being on the ground, or at least having all his people there to get this situation straight. If you have a case of water in your car that you just picked up from Walmart or wherever, and you go by the firehouse where the water is being given out as a normal distribution center, if they see the water in your back seat, they won't give you another case of water. So if you know of an elderly person who's shut in, who you want to be able to bring a case to, you can't take it to them. You can't pick up. These are the types of things that I'm talking about, that the only way somebody has to care about human beings in order to say, we got to do away with these foolish things. At one point, they were making people bring ID to the firehouse and other distribution centers. So there's a little girl, when you talk about the stories, there's a young girl, I believe she's 9 years old, she's undocumented, and the process with undocumented citizens in that area is you can only go to the doctor 3 times if you don't have your paperwork, and there's nothing else they can do for you.
What?
If you have a lead level 5, that means you have lead poisoning, just 5.
Okay.
She has a level 50, and they will not put her
50?
in the hospital.
50?
50. And they will not admit this young lady in the hospital in Flint because she's an undocumented citizen. And so that's what I mean by they're even more disenfranchised in this process because they don't have what's needed to be, considered an American, if you will.
How come we're not hearing more about these
I mean,
the
because
harm
it's
that's being
poor
done?
people.
And that's 2 years this has been going on.
2 years this has been going on, and if it's not for the people who have been keeping the story out there, some folks like the Roland Martins and others have continuously done shows about this.
Well, hasn't Nan been involved out there?
Well, I mean, I actually worked with Charles Williams from Michigan. He was one of the first people nationally to bring this case to the forefront to talk about the water crisis. And so we work with him. Of course, Nan's been involved. And I'm not even talking about the organizations because we are also, your voice is only as loud as the reporting that is going to be out there on the case. I'm just talking about the media. There really has been a lack of coverage, a lack of sensitivity and care. It's just very disrespectful. But I do appreciate the fact that Secretary Clinton asked to have the debate in Flint. With,
Did that make a difference?
It hurt her because Bernie Sanders was very, very strong that night, and he ended up winning Michigan a few days later, even though the polls had him down by double digits. However, it was very good.
Why do you think that happened?
I think he just, I don't know. Don't get me another day, another show. Don't get me on that. I feel a burn a little bit. I'm not going to tell you a lie.
Okay.
But, I feel a burn a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But,
Vice President.
But we've worked with Hillary, and I know her as well. I know her capabilities. But Vice President, certainly. And so, I don't even know. I lost my train of thought. But I know there's some serious stuff happening in Flint. What we were talking about is the importance of the debate being there. It therefore made CNN and others go into Flint for days before. And I could see in the faces of the reporters that they were like, this is ridiculous. What is happening here? So it has opened up a new conversation. The hearings happening, on the Hill are important. So there are things that are happening. But to me, I feel that, just as we're seeing Donald Trump, like we saw today that he has received almost $2 billion of earned media, right? Free media, just free media. Why is Flint not up there on that list? People have been poisoned. Children, little children.
Yeah.
See, we need to understand what media is doing.
Corporate
CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, MSNBC. These stations are not reporting news.
Right.
They don't.
No.
They spend more money on more time on entertainment and BS than anything else. I was talking to my family members the other day. I said, I want the news. I'm hearing all this stuff about Trump. How many of us know what's happening in England or France or Germany or parts of Africa, South America?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Oh, Brooklyn.
Yeah. So for that, you got to turn on Channel 12.
Exactly.
Or Channel 12 in the Bronx. But there's no news being given out on anything that's going on in the world. Freedom of the press is a joke. It doesn't exist. And they've gotten people dumbed down to the point that they want to know more about Kardashian and Kanye and all this other stuff than knowing about what's happening to human beings. And this is so criminal. They said
it's so criminal.
In Flint, 40% of the people in Flint only have a 6th grade education.
Already. Yeah, there's very serious issues.
40% of the black men are unemployed.
Yeah.
The number 40 is a significant number in Flint. So they were talking about, you have people that don't have an education, but you would say, well, and Steve said to the people, to save your children, you're going to have to leave. But where do you go?
Well, see, that's another problem, right?
Where do you go?
That's another problem. Because even if they have somewhere to go, there is another theory, conspiracy theory, if you will, but I don't believe it's a conspiracy among the local folks there that they're trying to take their land.
They are. That's what I was talking about earlier.
What's there to
so
take?
first of all, it was the area where all the auto industry was in Flint at one point. So it was a very thriving community. And if you go there, you see that the abandoned homes are beautiful. They're big. They're very nice plots. A lot of land around. And so there's already a developed land in Flint. And at one point, Flint was one of the richer counties in Michigan. So now these people believe that they want their land. And they're senior citizens who are like, we're not leaving here. So and unfortunately, they're still using the water. I talked to a young man who
you make it sound like it's really planned genocide.
I mean, it's
by
really,
real estate developers.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Wipe
them out, move them out, and redevelop the area. Same thing with Harlem. They did the same thing in Harlem.
Well, they didn't poison the water.
They didn't poison the water, but they got the black people out. You can't pay $3,000 a month rent.
Yeah, but you can't kill people with the water.
But in Flint, Michigan, they can.
In
Flint, Michigan, you can.
That's the part that, to me, it's like, we get it. We know gentrification. We understand all of that. But when you decide to poison people's water, this is an American crime. It's an American crime. And I've been there. I've seen these people. I was going to tell the story of this young man, Kendrick, who I met, who said to me, he's a tall, 6 foot, whatever, more than that guy, big guy. He's been around us a lot. And he said, I don't have time to boil 5 and 6 bottles of water in the morning to take a shower before getting ready to go to work. And my kids need the water. We have to make a decision. Are we going to give the water to the children? Are we going to take the water? He said, I don't have time to do that. Another young man, same build, same, young guy. They no older than 35. He said, I'm dying. My body is dying because I am lifting cases of water every day, carrying them up the stairs and down the stairs, taking them to seniors, taking them different places. This is what's happening with the people in Flint. So when I say that I feel that the president, I'm so disappointed, it's because what is the system here? How do you leave the system to the same people who destroyed the people in Flint in the first place? How do you leave it in their hands? At what point do you step in and say, we may not be able to declare this a natural disaster, but what power is in my hand? And not just sending money, because that clearly is not the answer. If you send a check to Flint right now, it will fly in the air, because there's no system for catching it and cashing it and then ensuring that it gets to the right folks. There are pastors who we've been working with who are awesome. They are great. Reverend McCatherine is a pastor that we work with. We give him all of our supplies. He's in the hood, in the community, walking the streets with the young people. He's tired. When we see him, you can tell from the first day we met him until now, he's tired. And he said his mind is going. He told us the other day he left his house. No, he said he was looking for his car keys all over the house. He couldn't find them. So he called somebody and said, come and pick me up because I can't find my house keys. The person pulled up to pick him up, and his car was running. He didn't realize that he had been outside his house already and had turned his car on. So his mind is going, either because he's sick or because he's tired. It's just too much. For him to be FEMA?
There was a boy
and then
on.
see all that
Everybody, they're lined up at his church all day long. And then last week, and I just have so much to say, I'm so sorry for just going on and on.
No, it's okay.
But last week when we were there, he told us that someone from one of these governmental agencies, a black woman who's the head of the minority folk for that organization, a federal agency, came to meet with him and told him that the water is safe to bathe in. Now,
Perhaps government agency.
Government agency told him the water. He gave us her card and everything, but I'm not going to try to make up who she is at this moment, or recall who she is rather. She came and told him that the water was safe to bathe in, and there's been a lot of reports about that now in Flint, that you can bathe in it, just don't drink it.
This is how recent?
This is just last week or
Okay.
2 weeks ago. No, it was last week. And so, one, you guys know Mark Ruffalo, right? Which is the Incredible Hulk.
Okay.
Okay, so he's very involved in environmental racism work and whatever. He had one of his environmental specialists test the water for different things. So it's like when you go to the doctor, if you get a blood test, that doesn't mean you're going to get an HIV test. You have to ask
Right,
for the HIV
specifically.
test. So they believe
Heavy metals
that
and toxins.
right. They believe that the EPA has been there and tested for lead and copper and those types of things, but have not necessarily tested for chloroform. So chloroform goes through your skin when you bathe. He is saying that there are high levels of chloroform in the water there in Flint right now, that people have extremely high levels of chloroform. So perhaps he's wrong. I don't know. I'm not a specialist. Perhaps he's wrong. How do you go and tell people that the water is safe to bathe in when you have all these different people reporting different things? Show these folks the proof. Where's the testing that the EPA has done for all of these other issues? We don't see it. It's not there. So the pastor has asked them, well, can you prove it to me? And he was told that they will be back. They would be back. And then he was told that, because he's bringing in showers, that the water is being pumped from another town outside, so that people can take showers. He said he has members that said they haven't had a good shower in a year. They have not bathed. Senior citizens haven't had good showers in a year. They can't wash their hair properly. So they told him, this is criminal. They told him not to put the showers in his yard, in the church parking lot, because it sends the wrong message to people that there's still something wrong with the water. A government agency told him. It sends the wrong
And you know,
message.
I still can't get over the fact that these people are paying for this water.
Paying for the water.
There was a young fella on graduating high school, and I think it was on Steve's show, and he's now having these blackouts. He's passing out.
Exactly.
And he can't drive a car. There's so many things he can't do because he blacks out. He can't even go to school. He said, I can't go to college because they told me I have a medical condition, and they don't want me falling in college, hitting my head on the floor or on the pavement, and then it's another legal issue. And this guy was leaning on his mother's breast crying, almost a grown man. But it's from drinking the water.
From the water.
And Tamika, you're going back out, right?
I'm going tomorrow to D.C. and back to Flint in 2 weeks.
Oh, you're going in 2 weeks. Can you get some water?
Well, you know,
No, I want to
actually,
take a camera
I
and
have to
take-
say to you that I have been in different places where we run the water, and I don't use it, but I've turned it on just curious, and the water is clear. So you want to test it? Because I'll get you some
You've
water to
seen
test.
clear water.
I've
in
seen
Flint.
clear. People have clear water. They have clear water.
I would like to, if anybody has the dirty water,
Yeah.
I'd like to get that.
There's still people with dirty water. There are people with filters, and the water is still coming through dirty. Russell Simmons was able to expose that when he was down there. There were people with filters on their systems, and the water was still coming through dirty. Because at this point, the pipes are corroded. There's no way to turn the pipes back. They have to be torn
Taken out, right.
and redone. And that is
So how-
a
how's that
substantial.
happening?
It's going to take.
Is
They
that
say it could
happening
be.
now?
There, here and there, you see a little bit of this and a little bit there. Is nothing happening in Flint. I don't care what people tell you. Well, you know, they are working on this and they're doing that and they're doing. It's all uncoordinated. It's all over the place. And until they get through this legal process, because again, the governor has hired 2 PR firms.
Firms?
2 PR firms. For
To make him look
$500,000,
good.
I believe, is the total cost of the PR firms. it's so much to remember. It's like, but anyway.
We got
he's
about
hired-
4 minutes.
Okay, so
I
he's
just
hired.
want you to give me this. What do you think the president should do about this?
I think that the president needs to deploy his senior level staff
Okay.
into Flint. And just like the congressional members have done, they need to walk the grounds of Flint and talk to people, figure out what's going on. They need to stop listening to what the government officials are telling them and go in there and do what the rest of us have done. Spend time with the people of Flint and find out for themselves exactly what is going on.
This is what you like to see.
That's what
Barack
I would like.
Obama.
That's the first step. Because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we could say, but we don't necessarily know what's in his power, what's not. We
We need him
believe
to
that
make
if
a
you are
vision.
not there, you cannot
Okay.
determine anything on your own.
All right. Well, President Obama, you heard it here on the Gilchrist Experience. We need you to go to Flint. All right? And maybe we'll get Reverend Al to encourage you to go to
Oh,
Flint.
absolutely.
All right?
I think Reverend Sharpton has done that already.
Okay, you think so?
I think so. I mean, at least I know that the pressure has been on
Okay.
Flint. So everybody knows we're there.
Okay.
Meet us in Flint.
All right.
You know?
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
It's just, we spend $1 billion a day in Iraq.
Hmm.
To say that there's no money to replace the infrastructure in a city in the United States is criminal.
It's criminal.
Well,
And
that's
we
all
was spent, for 8 years, we spent $1 billion a day.
But that's all been filibustered. We know that. Obama's put his best foot forward, and they just stopped on every turn.
But there is a surplus of money in the state of Michigan right now. They
Well, that's
have
the
money
governor.
that they're
That's-
sitting on, and there's nothing happening. And I understand that the president doesn't necessarily have control over local jurisdictions, but he
Right.
needs to say something, and often.
Okay. All right.
Matter of fact, the National Guard was distributing water. And one of the people said, we don't need the National Guard to get paid the rate of pay that they're getting.
Absolutely.
The men who
That's
are
another
unemployed
demand.
could be
Yes.
paid to
okay.
distribute the water. Why is the National Guard here when we could have the men that are unemployed that could make $8, $10 an hour,
Yeah.
whatever it
The
is?
mayor actually has a program that she's working on that is going to hopefully put the men to work to change the pipes, and to be able to distribute and do all the things to bring the city back.
Now, the emergency
Not just the
manager
men
has
either, the men and women.
Men and women.
the emergency manager
March.
has
This is
quit.
Women's History Month.
That is right.
The emergency
you're making
manager has
history.
quit.
Emergency manager has quit. They've had a bunch of people come in and out. If you look at this, if you really read the timelines, the New York Times had a good timeline. MotherJones.com, I believe, had a good timeline. You'll see all these people have just quit everywhere. It's a bunch of people who've quit because they know their hands are dirty.
The rats are running.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The rats are running.
Well, Tamika, this has been.
Listen, I'm glad I got a chance to come talk
Oh,
about
glad
it.
you got here,
somewhere.
girl, 'cause
Thank you.
We were waiting.
Oh.
Thank you.
We just
Thank you
ran
for
into Dan on the steps here. The last show,
Oh,
I watched the
really?
last show you did.
Okay.
And you came up the stairs. And I said, well, Tamika's coming today.
Yeah, well,
Last time she
God.
was here, we had a show.
Yep. Thank
We
you.
hadn't seen him in a while. So maybe we'll come back.
Yeah.
Please
All
get
right.
me that water.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get you some
But I'm
water.
going to tell you how to do it, because
Got
somebody is
15
going to say, oh, this isn't. No, we're going to do this
Tape the video.
the technical way.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
gonna
Again,
be
And then
technical.
seal
thank
it.
you for coming,
Seal it.
And
Tamika.
all
Sign,
And
seal,
The God in me
then
loves the
delivered.
God in you,
Yes.
and stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience. This has been a thriller. Power to the people.
Yeah.
God bless.